Hey everyone, Kevin Curtin here of Curtin Cole. I'm here today at Mohegan Sun with a very special guest. This gentleman sitting next to me is a singer, songwriter, piano player extraordinaire, and he's a platinum selling artist. And some of his songs are some of my favorites. It's really an honor to be here with him today. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to John Ondrasik of Five for Fighting. John,
hey Kevin.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to be here today, and just want to get right into this with you. So if you could take me back, I understand you grew up in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
You had have a piano player, a mother who was a teacher, piano player teacher.
Yeah.
And an astrophysicist for a father.
Yeah.
So if you could take me back to the early days of growing up, what was the dynamic in the household like? What were you listening to? How old were you when you got started playing? And take me through all that.
Yeah, I was very blessed. Still am blessed to have amazing, supportive parents. My mom, as you mentioned, was a piano teacher. She started me at 2 years old, believe it or not, playing, and she was wise. She didn't give me lessons. She had a friend who was a piano teacher, so my mom taught her friend's kids, and her friend taught me and my sister, because you can't really learn from your parents. And kind of got the fundamentals. And as you said, Dad was an astrophysicist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, kind of in the golden age of space exploration. His job was kind of navigation on some of the unmanned space flights, the Mariner mission to Mars. And I had this crazy childhood. On Sundays, I'd go down to JPL and I'd play Star Trek on their mainframe. And then I'd come home and, my mom would be teaching me these classical things, and I'd steal the Beatle book and I'd try to learn the Beatles songs. And at 13, when I wanted to play basketball, ride my skateboard, she let me quit, which again was very wise because I had the fundamentals, and she understood that if I really had a passion for this, I'd continue. If not, it was a great run and I could play just for fun. But I really started writing songs at 13 because it was fun. And my sister got a guitar for her 15th birthday, which I borrowed, and I still promise I'll give it back to her one day. And so that's kind of where it started, and just kind of started writing hundreds and hundreds of songs and had some good mentors. And, here we are, 40 years later. And it's just a blessing to be able to do this and have people sing your songs back to you. Absolutely.
I was wondering, just before we get into the college days, before all that, like what things were you listening to? And also, what were some of the songs that maybe you were playing on piano, whether that was, classical or just regular,
Well, I was actually playing a lot of Broadway songs. I played a lot of show tunes. When LA Unified lost their music funding, my mom started volunteering at the elementary school, and I was Tony in West Side Story. But of course, I loved David Gates from Bread, If, Carly Simon. I had the Burt Bacharach songbook as a kid, so I was playing Alfie and those songs. And as I get a little older, Frampton Comes Alive was a huge record for me. Purple Rain, I probably played 10,000 times.
One of my favorites.
And then, of course, the classic rockers, still a huge classic rock guy, Queen, The Who. Certainly Steve Perry from Journey was a big influence on me. I found his voice teacher and studied under his voice teacher for a while. So it's really kind of the classic rock. And of course the songwriters, the piano guys. Billy Joel was my first concert, Glass Houses, seen Elton a dozen times. So it was, I really was kind of formed on the great songwriters of the 70s. And of course to this day, that's what I listen to.
So how did you, as you got older, right, after high school,
yeah,
going into UCLA, and you studied mathematics,
yeah,
which is my worst subject, by the way, but how did you decide, how did you choose mathematics, and just take me through that whole experience if you can.
Well, to be honest with you, my parents and I had an agreement where they'd continue to support me, but we needed a plan B because there's no guarantees in this business. It's 100 to 1, doesn't matter how good you are. And it's not a meritocracy like sports. So I actually started at school at computer science, and I found myself spending 12 hours a day coding instead of 12 hours a day writing songs. So I had an aptitude for math. I got math so I could get a degree and get a job, and moved my kind of little studio into my dorm and was just writing and recording all the way through my teenage years and through college, learning productions, arrangements, different styles. And very interestingly, when I got out of college, the first group I actually started working with was all the ex-members of Pat Benatar's band.
Really?
Because I had met a very famous bass player named Rudy Sarzo.
Oh, Poison, right?
No, Rudy was Ozzy.
Okay.
Then
okay.
he was Whitesnake and
Got it.
Quiet Riot.
Got it.
And I met him in Malibu at this kind of community, and he introduced me to Scott Sheets, who wrote Fire and Ice for Pat Benatar. They're all 40. I was 22, and they're like, let's do a band. So I started working with them, and we were writing songs and doing kind of the Bon Jovi rock. And we actually had kind of a record deal, had a big manager kind of working with us. And then this little band called Nirvana came out.
Yeah.
And of course, that ended literally overnight, which for me was kind of a blessing because I went back to the piano. And that's when I really started writing the kind of piano-based singer-songwriter songs that I think is really kind of, my high fastball. And it kind of, struggled for 15 years and then became an overnight success.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, we always hear of, or people are always referring to folks as overnight success, but we don't hear the stories of you behind the scenes practicing and writing all these songs. So I was wondering if you could take me through, because you did a TEDx years ago, which I watched.
Thanks.
Fantastic, by the way. You did a good job on that.
Thank you.
But in that TEDx, you talked about all the rejection.
Oh, yeah.
And all the no's that kind of came down the line. And I was just wondering, how you kind of navigated through all that at such a young age, and then if you could take me through kind of at the point when you started really seriously pursuing this to the time that you actually got the deal, first album comes out.
Yeah, well, Steve Jobs has a great quote that I like, and he says, half the difference between a successful entrepreneur and an unsuccessful entrepreneur is pure perseverance. And that certainly was me. I was going to go down in flames, and I actually got a record deal with EMI Records. I made a record with them, the record company, the Beatles. A week after our record came out, the record label closed. We all have these stories.
Sure.
But I still kept, pursuing it. My wife, who at that time was my publisher, was sending out my demos to folks, after that record collapsed, and a little record company called Deep South Records in North Carolina said, we'll make a record with you. Mm-hmm. Then another little record company called Aware Records said, well, no, we'll make a record with you. And so basically I thought, well, let me just kind of record my demos. So, 40 years from now, I can say, hey, grandkids, Grandpa, try to do music. And so we made the little record, America Town, for like $50,000, going in at like midnight because we couldn't afford the day rates. Me and Greg Wattenberg, and
how do you two link up, by the way?
He was in a band and emerging producer. We had some common friends at our publishing company, and he liked my songs. And he was the one guy who said, you got to put that little song Superman on your record. And we had a minor hit with a song called Easy Tonight.
Great song.
Thank you. But it was interesting. It was a #1 AAA song, but it didn't sell any records. But it just shows you kind of the tightrope of life, the tipping point, how many things have to align. We did just well enough for them to say, all right, we'll give you one more song. And I remember saying, well, I'd like to do the Superman song because I see people reacting to it. And they're like, oh, are you crazy? It's the late 90s. It's boy bands, Little Affair, grunge music, piano's not on the radio. And I said, well, if I'm going down, I'm going to go down in flames with this song. And initially, the radio didn't want to play it. It was so different. And finally, it started to catch on. And I think one reason it became so popular was it was different at the time than everything on the radio. And
for sure.
But again, that was 15 years of rejection and, tears and anger. And even the song Superman, It's Not Easy to Be Me, was kind of built out of that frustration. It's not a song I could write now. I've learned it's pretty easy to be me, pretty easy to be most of us. Sure. But at that time, you could see where, a young songwriter hitting the wall, could write a song like that.
I was going to ask you before I get into Superman, just the inspiration behind Easy Tonight, because that is a great song.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually sad. It's kind of a suicide song. Certainly people in all aspects of life, know people or family members that struggle with depression.
Yeah.
And it was kind of based on that. It's not obvious, but if you kind of listen to it, you understand. But it's interesting too, it was the only kind of guitar rock song that's ever been a hit for Pfeiffer's Fighting. Everything else is kind of piano based. Yeah. So I like that the first song was a rock song, because you get kind of pigeonholed into this soft rock,
Sure.
soft rock piano guy, which is great. I mean, there's no problems with that, but we play it every night. We'll play it tonight, and there are surprisingly more folks than I'd think that remember that song.
Yeah. I just want to say too, on a side note, part of the reason I did take a little break from my show, and mental health is huge for me. During COVID, I went through a horrible depression.
Yeah.
Terrible, and almost lost my life.
I'm
And
sorry. Yeah.
Basically, long story short, it's so important to me, and I feel like we need to continue the dialogue, and talk about it more, because it's, I'm not the only one. Other people aren't the only ones that are struggling, and we're struggling.
Well, you're talking to one. I mean, I've had to take medication at times to get me through tough times, certainly during COVID.
Sure.
There are some things. Music is great therapy.
Yeah.
Taking care of your body,
Yeah.
working out. There's so many tools that I think we all can use and learn from each other. But no, certainly it's like, if folks need help, there's a lot of resources, but it's
Yeah.
still on us to take that first step.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you made it through that time.
Thank you.
I actually have a song called Devil in the Wishing Well,
Yeah.
which is a song that really is about kind of going into that dark side and coming out the other side.
Yeah.
Again, a song that's it's not overt, but enough people that I think have shared our experiences hear that song and they get it.
Yeah.
Because music, I think, is a great healer.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's gotten me through a lot of tough times too, and your music as well. So thank you. But getting into Superman, I want to have you talk a little bit about that song. I understand from the TEDx, one of the things I learned in that one was it took 45 minutes to write that song.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you could just take me back to what inspired you to write it, when it got released, kind of how everything kind of, after you look back on it and you had a minute to breathe and say, wow, what did all that feel like to you?
Yeah, no, it was just one of hundreds of songs I wrote. Sat down one night and kind of had the symbolism of Superman. We all try to be kind of the rock, and especially in families, and I had this thought of Superman's vulnerable too. Maybe we wouldn't want to be Superman all the time. And I think that's one reason why it's had the legs that it's had, especially for adults. It was very interesting when the song came out. Columbia Records came to me and said, something really weird is happening with Superman. They said, old people are buying your record. I'm like, what do you mean old people are buying my record? They go, yeah, people in their 30s and 40s are buying Superman. That never happens. It's kids.
Yeah.
But I think it was adults related, because I think they understand this kind of pressure that we all feel, to be providers, in this tough world, and, survivors. And at the end of the day, we're only human. And that's what really Superman is. We're just human, doing the best we can. And so I think, obviously, with 9/11 and Superman being one of the songs that provided some solace to particular family members of those heroes who ran into those buildings, and seeing the concert for New York certainly took on a dimension nobody could have imagined. But it was very strange. It was not doing well in the United States. Like in the Philippines, it was #1. Who knew? In the Philippines. So we saw signs that it was resonating, but radio takes so long and it was different. We saw that it was going to be a big song, but nobody could have imagined after 9/11 that it would be one of those songs. And it's still, even 23 years later, hard to put into words what that was like. But I'm glad the song was there, and I'm still glad that people find it and use it for their wellness and their and their escape.
Sure. Moving on to, I want to have you talk a little bit about 2004, The Battle for Everything.
Yeah.
This album, and I believe you worked with Greg on this one again, right?
He came in. I did Bill Bottrell, did most of the record.
Okay.
So we went with Bill Bottrell to the middle of nowhere in Mendocino and kind of had the rock, the rock experience of, we have a budget.
Yeah.
We can go make a record where we want. We can have all the guys in the room. And
No late night sessions, right?
no, but the people would the neighbors would bring over turkey pot pie, and there were 50 vineyards within a 20-mile radius, and we made, I think, probably my best record, but we didn't have the single to follow Superman, and I knew it. And so that was a lot of pressure, trying to write a song that did not regurgitate Superman, but kind of stood on its own. Mm-hmm. It took me 2 years to write 100 Years, and again, hundreds of songs. So when it came time to record it, Greg was very generous to come produce that with me. Because I think we both knew that, the song had potential to, to really cement me as a songwriter, not just a one-hit wonder. And we did. And to this day, I think for me at least, that's my favorite Five for Fighting record.
Is it?
Yeah.
I was going to ask, and I have a quick story on this for you too, but 100 years. So again, going back to the TEDx, because I really enjoyed watching that. And in that, you said that 100 years took a long time to write. So
Yeah.
how did you know when it was ready? It was done, you spent months and months. So how do you know, like as a songwriter, when, hey, this is done,
Sometimes you never know. Like the riddle, I still don't think I finished it right. Sometimes,
Yeah.
that one I worked on for a year.
Wow.
But, I think you go through a bunch of permutations, you find the keys. That song's actually very long for radio. It's over 4 minutes. But we kept trying to shrink it, but it just didn't feel right. That's such a story, it's such an arc of our lives. And then getting every lyric right, writing hundreds of lyrics to get the 30 lines. And so we just went through a bunch of permutations, and then, we were very careful in crafting the production. For a song that's going to be a radio song, you're a little more meticulous with the crafting and the arrangements. And it just took a while. But that's what most songs do. Superman was a gift. That doesn't happen.
Sure.
Happens to Paul McCartney probably, but doesn't happen to me. So that was a gift. But 100 years, we kind of thought we had something, and fortunately, it kind of became again, a song that found its way into the culture.
There's not too many songs I can put on and play, and a lot of songs bring us back to a certain period of time in our lives, right? But 100 years is a song I put on, and I'm a big guy. I'm a pretty mean-looking guy maybe, but it brings a tear to my eye. It really does every time I play it. And I do want to bring a quick story into this really quick. I remember in high school, it was our senior year, and we were all getting ready to graduate, and I did the musical back in high school, and it was a group of us in a room, and we all knew this was it. This was the last time we're all going to be here. And, little did we know what we were going to get into in the real world, right? But we were all sitting there, and they played 100 years. And we were all sitting there, not a dry eye in the room. Just sitting there crying, and just, because we knew this was the last time we were going to see everybody here doing what we were doing. And every time I hear the song, it brings me back to that period of time.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So anyway,
Thank you.
I just love when you can associate songs with periods, moments in time.
When I hear Every Breath You Take, I'm back on the beach in Zuma 6, trying to get girls to talk to me. I play guitar, But no, I have songs like that too, that I remember, concerts,
Sure.
And that's the great thing about music. It kind of marks our lives with memories.
Yeah.
Right? I wrote a little bit of that in my song Slice that kind of talks about how memories and music, and usually they're good memories, sometimes they're not, but they're important memories.
Sure. So moving on to 2006, Two Lights. I know you said The Battle for Everything is your favorite. I think Two Lights is my favorite.
Cool. Yeah.
So I want to have you talk a little bit about the inspiration behind the riddle and Two. I actually really like the song Two Lights. I'm a big fan of that song, and I particularly like the outro of that song, how that was produced and arranged and everything. But yeah, feel free to share this.
Yeah, the
story.
riddle actually started on guitar and moved it to piano. And again, it took a long time for me to try to hone that song, because certainly the kind of concept of, we're very small, but our lives are everything to us. So this dynamic of big and small, and also parenthood. I had young kids then, and you can really see in that record, I Just Love You, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You could see like, okay, this guy has young kids now, and he's thinking about the world beyond him. Earlier records, 65 Mustang is the dude and his, here's my car. Two Lights is more like, well, here's my kids, and here's songs about my kids, and here's songs about the world. What kind of world do you want?
Yeah.
Two Lights, which is about our soldiers, our military families. And frankly, Two Lights, for me, is probably one of the most important songs to me.
Yeah.
Because it's one that I've been able to play for so many of our veterans and military families, and has really become a song important to them, which in many ways is even more humbling than having hit songs.
Sure.
So, and that is a song.
The impact that you have on people.
Yeah, it also has the most insane, killer string arrangement by
does.
George Del Barrio that is
Incredible.
so epic.
Yeah.
So whenever we play it with the string quartet, it's probably my favorite song to play with the string quartet.
Yeah.
And but yeah, that one, you know, I do really appreciate what some of those songs in that record have become. You
Yeah.
know, like World has become a big kind of anthem for many causes. You know, The Riddle wasn't a big hit as 100 Years, but there's a lot of songs in there that have helped in different ways.
Yeah.
that have led me to meet amazing people and amazing kind of heroes.
Sure. I was also going to ask too, like, just in terms of the getting together with producers on that album, like,
Yeah.
how did that all come together after your last album?
Yeah.
Like, was any of it kind of up to you? Hey, I'm going to pick these producers, or was the label kind of like, hey, here's who we got, go work with them?
Well, for better or worse, I'm like, I'm producing this one, me and my guys. And, you know, for better or worse, you know, Greg did come in and work a little bit on some stuff. But yeah, we produced that one ourselves. Is that a mistake? I don't know. It didn't do as well as the other records. Maybe a producer would have done something. On the other hand, I felt pretty confident that we were kind of knew what we were doing, and it was kind of fun to do it our way. And I do think, you know, there are some really kind of fun Policeman's Christmas Party and songs like that. But yeah, so we just kind of did it ourselves, and it was a great experience. And you know, we got to make another record. That's the goal of every record. It's like, do well enough so you can make another one.
Well, can you talk about the pressure, like after each record, like just the pressure that, you know, taking yourself as a creative, like putting that aside, and just talk about the pressure that you deal with as a person, you know?
Well, success can bring, you know, many challenges, especially in a business that's so narcissistic as this.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes what makes you successful is your ego. What takes you down is your ego.
Sure.
And especially if you have a song like Superman out of the box that is so overwhelming that there's no way you can ever eclipse what that song did. So you're kind of intimidated by that. And also you understand, you know, if you're blessed enough to have a hit song, you understand that if you can have another one, you can be at the Mohegan Sun in 20 years talking to you. And it took 2 or 3 years to get that song. And it's interesting, once that song was successful, I often wonder, I go, well, now that I'm a little comfortable, does that angst, not having that angst, hurt your songwriting? You know, so there's always this balance of that angst and desire and fear can help the creative process. On the other hand, it can like bring you and have you make decisions that are probably poor decisions, because you try to just regurgitate, oh, that song worked, I'm going to write it again. You see many artists do that.
Sure.
And very, very rarely does it work. And so there's certainly pressures, but you know, there's pressures in all aspects of life.
I've just always wondered, like, how musicians find that balance from the business to the music, you know?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, some folks that I know are just musicians.
Yeah.
They just write songs, and they'd be writing songs whether they had 10 people watching them or 10,000. And I envy them, because they're just in their world. They don't do anything with the business. They don't care. They're just happy, and they're usually the happiest ones.
Yeah.
Because they're not consumed with ticket sales, chirpa, you know, running the machine, which I do. I kind of the business guy. Mm-hmm. But the pressure is always there. And but again, it's like it's all relative. And when you do this long enough, and you work with ALS charities, you work with Gold Star families, you work with autistic children, you learn very quickly that it's actually pretty easy to be most of us. And even though, we feel these pressures, oh my God, what if I don't have a hit and I can't do this again? It's real. It drives us. But then when you look beyond yourself, you realize pretty much everybody would love this problem. And so you try to kind of have this balance. And you try to, when you walk off the stage, you try to check your ego at the door, which can be hard, but I think that's also helpful.
By the way, before I forget about the 65 Mustang, that was your first car, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Is it true that it was purple originally, or you painted it purple?
So my dad bought it the week I was born, literally the week I was born.
Yeah.
So now you can do the math. and drove it. And then in high school, he gave me the Mustang, and I did. I kind of rebuilt it.
Stick shift, by the way?
No, automatic
Automatic,
fastback.
okay.
And I was a huge Prince fan.
Yeah,
And
I'm
Purple
a
Rain
huge
was out,
Prince fan, too.
so I painted it purple. And I drove it around purple, and then I actually got $11,000 for my first record deal. So I took the $11,000 and I repainted it back to its natural powder blue, and I gave it back to my dad.
Nice.
He's like, I forgive you. And it's still in my garage. When I get
Wow.
home, I cruise it around, and my kids are fighting over it. But
Yeah.
we.
It's amazing that you've kept it in the family that long.
Oh yeah, it's part of the family.
Yeah.
Actually, I put a seatbelt on it though. I put a seatbelt on it and a cassette player in. So there you go.
Nice. I'm a big car person. Love muscle cars and classic cars. Anyway, going back after you left Columbia, right, and doing the Slice album and Bookmarks albums, what were those experiences like? Just working on those albums and just, take me through those.
Yeah, I mean, it was, the Slice record didn't do as well as we'd hoped, so Columbia dropped me, and Greg Wattenberg had been at Wind Up. He's like, come over, we'll do a record. And I'm like, yeah, it'd be fun. Let's go back to the future. And we had a great time making the record, and I think there were some good songs on there. What If was a good song. Heaven Knows, I think, was a good song.
That is a great song.
And,
yeah.
But, you kind of get to a point where radio is kind of like, yeah, thanks, we like you, thanks for the memories, but, they're moving on. And Bruce Springsteen even wrote a song about it. He was so pissed off. And, but so I was grateful to make Bookmarks, but I also saw the writing on the wall, and we kind of toured that. And it's hard, especially artists kind of that had success in the early 2000s, late 90s, when the music business was kind of at its highest peak.
Sure.
And then when the wave crashed and all the money came out, you're kind of used to these tour support, and you're used to, having budgets, and that goes away. And then for many of us, kind of our success kind of came down a level, and that's hard when you're used to, having 5,000 people a night, and now it's 1,000 or it's 500. We're used to having a top 5 song, and now it's top 20. That can kind of gut you a little bit, and so you have to find other ways to make music and create things that bring you some joy, and also give avenues to people to hear you. So I started kind of creating TV shows. I was writing, Chances in the Blind Side. We kind of saw how a song, kind of a movie, can really blow up a song. I wrote some songs for television, All for One for Y50. So, and I started doing the keynotes, and I have a family business. So I was working there. So I try to find other ways to create, but not be beholden to the record business and radio. Because if you are, you're probably going to be disappointed. I mean, I love the Bare Naked Ladies, kind of their attitude. They have a new song, a new record, and the new song is amazing. It's great. 20 years ago, it'd be a top 5 song.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be now. But they're like, our audience loves it. We have fun every night playing it. Our fans love it. And it's like, if you keep that attitude in your brain, you'll be happy, and you'll probably create better music.
What's your advice for today's generation of musicians? It's a different game. It's a different landscape.
Yeah.
The major model versus independent. What's your advice, recommendations?
Again, I don't know if I'm a good person to ask this question, because I kind of came up in a completely different world.
Sure.
I still think songs matter. I think if you're going to have a song that stands the test of time, which we're having fewer and fewer of those, I think songs matter, and well-crafted songs. It's certainly easier to get heard than it was for me with the internet and YouTube. You can find an audience yourself. You're not subject to record labels that they have their 10 artists they'll promote. But also, again, there's not the tour support and the money to build your career. Like, people forget, Bruce Springsteen broke on his 3rd record. Doesn't happen anymore. There's no 3rd record. There's no 2nd record. There's no 1st record. You release a single.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky, you release another single. But, I still think what I tell artists too is, write a lot of songs, record your songs. You can literally make a record on your laptop. You can make a single on your laptop. You need to do everything. You wear the hats. And the hardest thing, the most important thing, is to play live.
Play live.
In this day and age where there's auto-tune and there's all these things and you can make really good sound and stuff, playing live is scary, it's hard, but it's the best educator. Because when you write a song, your friends will love it, your parents will love it. It's great, great.
Sure.
But you don't know what you have to. You go out and play it for an audience that's never maybe heard you or seen you. That'll help you grow as an entertainer and an artist. And it goes well beyond songwriting. You have to be able to perform. You have to have been able to carry an audience.
Sure.
And also there's things like sync, television. So many artists, these days write for TV. So there's ways for people to hear your music. There's not just radio. But just keep writing good songs, enjoy it, try to build a base. And if you can get a few people to buy some tickets and be able to sustain a career, it truly is a dream come true.
Sure. Just want to close with this. You did a song and you actually went to Ukraine in 2022. Can one man save the world? And perform that with the Ukrainian orchestra. Just want to know how this all came about, what that experience was like for you, and what all of this means to you still today.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk for an hour about it, but it really started with Afghanistan. I'd written a song after the Afghan withdrawal called Blood on My Hands, critical of the withdrawal, that became kind of embraced by our Afghan veterans. And it kind of got so surreal and ridiculous that there were people in Afghanistan, Americans and our allies trapped, emailing me because they were so desperate. So I started working with some of these NGOs to get people out. One was called Save Our Allies. And at the outset of the war in Ukraine, they had moved some of their operations there. They knew it was coming. And I'd written the song, Can One Man Save the World? And to support Zelensky and the Ukrainians. And I had an idea, actually, why don't I go to Poland and I'll play the song with the Polish orchestra, use some folks there and shine the light on Poland. And I called a friend of mine who was actually at my show the other night and said, how about this idea? She said, let me get back to you. And she called me a few days later and said, how would you like to go to Ukraine and play with Ukrainian orchestra, which was stunning to even hear. But it actually happened. We were able to go a couple months later and the ministry wanted us to come. And it's quite an adventure getting there. But we were able to perform. Typically in Ukraine, when you perform in the subways because of the air raids. You don't want to be shooting outside and all of a sudden you have to cut everything and so you go underground. But they allowed us to play at kind of hollowed ground because I think they understood the nature of the song. We played in the Antonov airport, which was bombed by Putin in the beginning of the war, where the hangar held the symbol of Ukrainian independence. It's actually an airplane. It's called the Maria. It's the biggest cargo plane in the world. On the Army patch, you'll see the airplane of the Maria. So they literally let us put the orchestra in front of this blown up plane in jet fuel and tanks and some other things I won't mention here, and put my piano there. And we were able to record this song, make this video with the Ukrainian orchestra, which is incredibly powerful to be there.
Amazing.
Every member of that orchestra had either had a family member killed, had somebody on the front lines, or somebody missing. So for me to kind of be with them and them kind of represent the fortitude of the Ukrainian people and to share this experience with them, this communal experience through music, was every emotion you can imagine. Inspiring, frustrating, angering, just everything. I wish every American could have sat in my shoes there and kind of understood. You see firsthand this David versus Goliath. And so, we didn't sleep much when we were there, but I look forward to going back and playing the song after they win this war.
So just to close out here, you're on tour right now with the Bare Naked Ladies, right? Yeah. Feel free to share with our audience, with your audience, kind of what you have coming up, and also maybe what else is going on and what else we could look forward to moving forward.
Yeah, well, I should say, please check out the Can One Man Save the World video with Ukrainian orchestra. It's on YouTube. Every time you watch it, donations go to Save Our Allies. We are having a blast with the Bare Naked Ladies. They're the nicest, greatest people. Their show is incredible. We're just having so much fun. I do have a project that I worked on for the last few months, a song I wrote with some inner city Chicago kids.
Nice. To
promote music in the schools. We wrote a song together, and none of them were really musicians, but they wrote the whole lyric, and we just kind of finished that, and we're gonna promote music in the schools. It'll raise a music teacher for their school for 3 years. That's already done, but we wanna take it larger and kind of, with my mom, her generosity in coming and taking over our school. It's very close to me. I know how music can change lives, especially inner city children. So that'll be coming soon, and we'll do a string
awesome.
quartet tour in the fall, and who knows, maybe there'll be a new Five for Fighting record before too long.
Nice. And where can everybody find you on social media? Do you have just
Yeah.
one hashtag or one?
Five for
or-
Fighting Music on Instagram, John Ondrasik on Twitter, Five for Fighting on Facebook. I just did the thread thing last night. I don't know if that's going to happen. So I have one post. So you can see our DC show, post there. But yeah, no, we appreciate everybody. And special shout out to our veterans and our troops out there. Gary Sinise Foundation, Lieutenant Dan Ban, love you, our troops. Yeah.
And for our show, all social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Curtin Cole 87. John, thank you so much again. This was fantastic.
My pleasure.
Hope you have a great rest of the tour here with the Bare Naked Ladies. And this was just a fantastic conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.